Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then welcome. My name's Natasha and I do book things here. Today's video is going to be my August wrap up and I'm going to talk to you guys about the books that I read this month. First off though, I'm going to give you guys some stats like I do every month. They'll be like over here somewhere. I ended up only reading 9 books this month, which to me is only reading 9 books. I read like what, I think it was 17 books and then last month I read 23. For me, having that jump from reading 23 books down to 9 is like a significant difference. The reason for that is 3 main things: wedding planning, depression, life. I will say that doing booktubeathon actually kind of took a lot out of me. I am typically a mood reader, so when I set myself up with a TBR, a lot of the times I get sort of discouraged by what I want to read. It kind of just threw me off. So I finished booktubeathon and then I don't think I read for about 5 straight days. I was just like, nope, books, nope. I just want to let you guys know that if you read 1 book a month, that's great. If you read 50 books a month, that's great. Like, it doesn't matter. Everyone reads at a different pace. I like tracking my stats. It just gives me like a weird sense of accomplishment. This month, as I mentioned, I read 9 books for a total of 2,723 pages. And that equals out to about 88 pages read per day. So that 88 pages read per day is not necessarily accurate because I didn't read, like I said, for the whole first week of August. I was actually like savoring books this month, if that makes any sense. I read fairly quickly and a lot of these books were gifts from my friends, so I wanted to read them carefully and enjoy my reading process. And then as for my star ratings, this month I had no 1 or 2 star books, so that's really good. There was nothing that I like hated or just despised in any sort of way, which is good. And then the rest of the books went 3 3 stars, 3 4 stars, and 3 5-star books. First 3-star book that I read this month was from my library. I ended up reading Queens of Geek, and this was just a 3-star book for me. It follows a couple friends who are going to essentially Comic-Con, or like what they consider Comic-Con. And one of the girls suffers from social anxiety, general anxiety, and as well is on the Asperger's autism spectrum, which she self-identifies, which I think is really cool. So I did really like that representation. I thought it was very interesting. I myself don't know sort of like how accurate that is. I have a little bit of social anxiety sometimes. I just sort of have like generalized anxiety about things. But for me, the story felt just sort of too convenient. I don't like it when a book is too convenient, yet I like books where the ending wrap up nicely, which this did. I don't know how I kind of felt about it. It's just one of those books that I read. It was just average. I didn't take too much away from it. The only thing that really pissed me off in this book though, there's one scene where the one character is standing in line to meet her favorite author at this Comic-Con, and then like the author just leaves and like she stood in line for 5 hours for nothing. Just in general, that idea just pissed me the fuck off. It gets sort of solved and whatnot later in the book, but like it's just that one thing in the book where I just felt for this girl, where I was like, I would be fucking heartbroken and totally crushed. And it was just one of those moments that just upset me. I read it and went, oh really, like, you know. It was an okay book. I think if you were more into cosplay and more into Comic-Con and that sort of like, I don't want to say geek culture, but you know what I mean by that hopefully, then you'd really like this book. It's just for me, I've never been to a Comic-Con. I really don't necessarily have an interest in it. I've been to makeup conventions, which are very different, but I haven't been to sort of a Comic-Con like environment. So it's definitely different for me to read about it and then like expect myself to care about it, because I don't. But if that's what you're into, then I suggest it. It's cute. It wraps up nicely. So there, read that if you'd like. So up next in my 3-star books is one that my friend gave me, and I hate rating my friends' books anything less than like a perfect 5. That's hard for me, but at the same time, I read so much, I have opinions. That's just sort of how it is. Reading 9 Stories by J.D. Salinger, which my friend Becca got me. You guys can see all the books that my friends got me for my bachelorette party. I have a haul down below if you guys want to check that out. But anyway, she got me this one and she said it works well with her like emo past and stuff. And this is a collection of short stories. I think I have an issue with short story collections. The thing with collections is there's always going to be a couple stories that you like more than the other ones, and that was definitely the case in this. 9 different stories in this, and I really liked 2. Like 2 were definite 5-star stories for me, and the other ones were more sort of average, a couple that I didn't like as much. But the very first one and the very last one in this, which A Perfect Day for Banana Fish was the one that I really, really like. And then also Teddy, which is the very last one, is one that I really like. They were like blow my mind amazing short stories. Especially A Perfect Day for Banana Fish was like so fucked. I was kind of like, where is this book going? Just sort of the averageness of the rest of the stories for me just made this a 3-star book. But if I were to go back and rate individual short stories, which I don't even, could people even do that? I don't know if people do that. I think this is a really interesting book to pick up if you like short stories and you like J.D. Salinger and his work and stuff like that. Then definitely check it out. But I would highly suggest checking out those 2 short stories that I mentioned, A Perfect Day for Banana Fish and Teddy, because those ones were really good and they actually like left me kind of like impacted and I had to think about them for a while, which I'm like, oh, here I am thinking about things. I read a lot of books that are just fluff that don't really leave me thinking. This definitely sort of gave me a book hangover when I finished reading them, because there were so many that I had to like kind of go back and go, wait, what? Like, what just happened? Because short stories just wrap up so quickly that I almost read them too fast and I go, wait, what the fuck did I read? Overall, I gave it 3 stars and I really like that Becca gave this to me because it's definitely something that I wouldn't have picked up on my own. You have another 3-star, which is Bobcat and Other Stories. This is another short story collection. Just my general opinion this month is that short story collections are not really my thing. Again, because I like some of them a lot and then I don't like other ones. And so to me, it sort of pisses me off a little bit that I like some and I don't like other ones. These ones were really well written, but very actually similar to the Salinger ones. They're all talking about like Chauncey sort of rich people and things that I don't personally do. So I found it hard to care about anything, and then I also find it hard to care about characters when you're reading a short story because you know that it's just going to be gone in like 20 pages. Yeah, does anyone else have issues with short stories? I'm just realizing that like I don't think I like them that much. There's a couple things in here that I like more than others, but to be honest, it was kind of pretentious and I didn't care that much. But I mean, the writing was good and I was intrigued in the moment, but then once I finished a short story, I immediately forgot what I read. So this was just a 3-star for me. It was just average and okay and decent. But to be honest, out of the 2, I highly suggest 9 stories more than this. So, alright, so then moving into 4-star books, I read also from my library Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This was highly suggested to me by like pretty much the entirety of BookTube. It follows a bunch of kids, teenagers, who all end up going to a school for children who have went to different mythical lands. Essentially, like, one goes to Narnia, one goes to like, I don't know, Wonderland, I don't know, whatever. So then they're dealing sort of coming back to Earth however many years, months, whatever later. Here's the thing, I love the concept for the books, I really like the characters. To me, there wasn't enough world building like for the actual school itself. To me, there wasn't enough sort of backstory as to like the head lady of the school. This book could have been an extra 100 pages. Like, it's a short book, it's only like, I don't know, like what, 200 pages? 169 pages, I think. But like, it could have been a 300, 400 page book if they flushed it out and made it a little bit longer, and then I probably would have liked it a little bit more. It's the same sort of thing with like short stories. I feel like everything's too rushed, and even though this is a really well written book, it's just, I wanted more from it. I just wanted more imagery so that I could, you know, see and envision these really fascinating, cool characters and concepts in that world. Now, I know there's obviously a second book where they sort of go more into depth with one of the kids' background, which is interesting. So I'm excited to read that, and then also to see if the series is getting continued further, because it's such a cool concept that I'm really into it. So to me, it just wasn't perfect and I wanted more from it, so I ended up just giving it a 4-star rating. So up next, I have 2 that were 4-star books, which you guys are probably going to kill me because a lot of my friends highly like these books and a lot of people in BookTube like rate them 5 out of 5. And I'm going to tell you guys sort of why I don't like them. So the first one is The Handmaid's Tale, which is obviously Margaret Atwood. This is a book that I have been wanting to read forever, and my friend Chrissy picked up and was like, here, enjoy this dystopian novel. And one thing I will say about this book is it is so well written that I now have to just go read like every Margaret Atwood book. So please leave me comments down below as to like which ones I should read following this, because I know nearly nothing about the rest of her work, I'll be honest with you there. But for those of you that don't know anything about this book, which is, it's hard not to know anything about this, this is a dystopian that takes place in this world where women are essentially used for mostly like breeding. They have a couple other tasks, but it's essentially breeding, and it's a very weird, dystopian, creepy friggin' world. One thing I loved about this was just how like unsettling it was, yet in a fucked up way, reading it at this time in my life and reading it in like the current political state of the world. It like fucked me up. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, in a sense that in a weird world, like dystopian, not so far off world, this could happen. I'm starting to realize that I like dystopian novels where the concept isn't extremely far-fetched, where it's sort of plausible that this could happen. So this was just beautiful in the world building. Like, I felt so uneasy by so many things in this, and I felt just like creeped out, and then I was kind of like, you know, not trustworthy of certain characters, and I was like, oh, what's gonna happen here? Like, where's this gonna go? Yeah, I love this. But the only thing that I didn't like about this was the ending, and that's the exact reason why I bumped it from a 5 to a 4.5. It is almost a perfect book for me. Everything like leading up to it was a perfect book for me, except for the ending where you don't really find out what the hell happened to the main character. Like, you do in a way and you don't. Without giving any spoilers, it's just sort of like a, you know, choose your own adventure ending, basically. It's like, depending on how hopeful you are, it sort of continues in your mind whether you think that this happened or that happened. I don't like that. I like cleanly wrapped up books, and it's like, I like being enthralled. I like being like, oh, what's gonna happen? But then I like it for it to be wrapped up. Like, here's what happened. Yeah, it was a perfect novel for me. I definitely annotated some spots, so I'm gonna read one that I like. To me, this book, there's just so much beautiful writing that I almost felt like I could annotate the whole thing. There's another spot in this as well that I just liked. It says, I feel like cotton candy, sugar and air. Squeeze me and I turn into a small, sickly, damp wad of weeping pink red. That stuck with me. It was like, that's beautiful. Another spot that I liked as well, in the book there's these sort of like spies that are called the eyes, and they kind of see what everyone's doing. It says, we must look good from a distance, picturesque like Dutch milkmaids on a wallpaper, or a shelf full of period costume ceramic salt and pepper shakers, or anything that repeats itself with at least minimum grace and without variation. Soothing to the eye, the eyes, for that's who the show is for. It's just that like play on words, like soothing to the eye, the eyes. It was just like, whew, like I felt some sort of way about that. Definitely read this if you haven't and you're a woman, just read it. Just read this. It was fantastic. It's just, I personally didn't like the ending, though some people might like it, so. And then literally for the exact same reason I gave this a 4.5, I also gave The Giver 4.5 for this sort of random ending as well, where you sort of are left to believe whatever you feel like believing happened to the narrator. I just don't like that. I wanted it to be wrapped up and clean. I wanted to be like, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, and there's no question about it, as opposed to what ended up happening at the end of this. This is another beautiful, beautiful book. Like, it's stunning, and I highly suggest that everyone read it. This is another dystopian, which was really weird because I read this and then I just read another dystopian immediately after, so I felt like I was just in this dystopian mindset, which was hard because they're not like super pleasant books to read. The concept for this one's really neat though, is that children from ages 1 to 12 are known as 1s, 2s, 3s, depending on your age. And then at age 12, they're given a job that is essentially their job until they can no longer do it. And then they're old people, which is just, they're old and they're essentially worthless. So the narrator that we're following is a young boy, and he gets a very specific job to do that's very interesting. I'm not even going to tell you guys what that is because it's super cool to me. I thought it was just fascinating when I found out what it was. Sort of his journey through that and going from there. There's beautiful writing in this, beautiful characters, and some characters that like you really feel for. One of the things that I loved about this book was during the beginning, a lot of the younger kids have to do certain sort of like volunteer roles, and they volunteer helping out the older people. And it's really interesting reading from the mindset of a 12-year-old boy who is so like proud and like kind and nurturing towards like these older people, and like he helps this one older blind woman bathe, and it's just this beautiful scene where it's like, you know, he's not weirded out to be bathing her, and then she's very appreciating of it. And it just made me think, because I mean, really, when you think about it, how many teenage boys in this day and age wouldn't be like super fucking weirded out by like bathing an older woman? It's just that shitty millennial idea of like, oh, I don't want to do that. And to me, it's just such a beautiful moment to like break down barriers. To me, it's just sort of like a beautiful connection, and I wish I actually saw more of that in the real world, where it was like we have, you know, younger teenagers and tweens, whatever, interacting with older people and just getting that sort of knowledge from each other, that sort of like youthfulness about life, and then that knowledge about life. Yeah, anyway. But basically, this just made me think about like my grandparents and the fact that like I have no grandparents left, and I wish so badly that when I was like 12 years old, I would have just sat down and like just been like, tell me all your stories. It's just you don't have that knowledge at that age than you do when you're older, and you wish that you would have like sat down and listened to stories and listened to them talk. And anyway, it's just the ending, while it was nice, it just sort of left it up for your interpretation, which just wrap it up nicely for me, please. You know, it's like I don't want my brain to think about what happened. I just want an answer. So this is why I gave this 4.5, but I really liked it and I highly suggest it. So then moving on to 5-star books, the first one that I loved was Gemina, which is the second book in the Illumini series. This book is just fucking awesome. Oh, like I just love this series, and I'm so excited for Obsidio to come out like next year. I'll just be like getting my grubby little hands on it because I'm like, I want it. I love this series. I, again, never thought I would be a YA science fiction space person, but then I'm like, well, why wouldn't I be? I fucking love space. This is just awesome, and there's really no way to describe this book unless you pick it up. I think I mentioned it in my one video, but basically it's told in like dossier files format, and so it's very interesting to like read through. And even though they're big friggin' hunks of books, like this one was like 650 pages, you can read it really quickly because pages don't have a lot of text on them. This one was really interesting though, because this focuses on one of the other ships in this whole story, and it's just different perspectives in the same sort of space world. There was some shit that went on in this book that I was like just like glued to it. I was so fascinated by it. I was like, what is going on with these crazy space worms? What is going on with these people who are on this ship now? Like, what is happening with this love interest in this one? It was just great. I loved every second of it, and I loved how people from the first book interacted with people from the second book and how they came together. I thought that was great. I just loved it. I just loved it as a whole, and I just loved that it was, you know, the second book in a trilogy, and it was just as amazing as the first one. And so this is a definite 5 stars for me because I finished it and I immediately was like, oh, I need the third book. Very rarely do I feel that way about a sequel ever. Normally I just hate them. So go read those immediately. I love them. They're great. Alright, another 5-star book for me, one that I just finished yesterday, so it's very fresh in my memory. This is Ugly Girls by Lindsay Hunter. This friggin' book, guys, whoo, okay. Here's what I can say about this. If you guys want to read a book that is literally about trailer trash people, and I mean that, they live in a trailer, they're kind of trashy, and you just want like honest, raw, very fucking creepy, very like just in your face, here is personalities and what they do and what they deal with, read this. This is fucking amazing. This is like just some of the creepiest, raw shit I've read in a long time. So this book follows 2 teenage girls. One girl's name is Perry, the other girl's name is Baby Girl. Her name is Dana, but everyone calls her Baby Girl. And Perry lives in a trailer park with some like real sketchy people, and her mom and her stepdad, who are both kind of also sketchy people. Her stepdad's pretty chill though. But when I went into this, I wasn't expecting to see it from everyone's perspectives. So it jumps from the perspective of both the 2 teenage girls as well as the stepdad, the mom, and another character. So these 2 girls basically like they sneak out, they get in trouble, they steal cars, they drink, they just are like general like shitty teenagers in my opinion. But then they're both talking to this one boy that they believe is like a high school boy from another town over. As you come to read the book, you find out that it is this like creepy predatory guy who is creeping on them. That's not a spoiler, that's in here. The creepiest part about this book that I wasn't expecting was that you get to see his perspective and his thought process about creeping on these girls, and it's gross and it's creepy and it made me feel like hella uncomfortable, but at the same time you're just like captivated reading it. I've never read from like that perspective. Like I've always read like, hi, I'm a teenage girl, I'm getting creeped on by this guy, but I've never read it from like, hi, I'm the creepy guy, I'm gonna creep on these teenage girls. It's a lot to deal with. It's a lot of like really like raw emotion. Like the author does not censor any language. There's a lot of swearing, there's a lot of graphic detail about certain things. So yeah, very fucked up book, but then also incredibly good. Like it was just everything that I was looking for in a weird creepy book, basically. So I really liked this part. It said, baby girl laughed, a grinding, dry kind of sound like she was pushing something out of her throat. Something else she got from the boys at school. They were almost outside and he yelled, ain't nothing open past 1 a.m. but legs. Baby girl laughed hard at that too, but once they were outside, her laughter got swallowed up by the quiet of the night, and then what was the point? So just the description of that certain character and like her need for attention was really interesting. I thought that was really good. And then I loved this description as well about her mother. And it said, Perry loved Myra the way that any child loves their mother, only she could see her mom more clearly than any daughter could. Myra wasn't some smeary presence who lived only for her kid. Perry was just a midpoint on her timeline. So, very interesting describing a mother-daughter relationship. But yeah, the other parts that I marked off were spoilers for the book, so I'm gonna leave that there. But this is intense, and I think if you guys want an intense book about just teenagers getting into shit and getting creeped on and stuff, this is the book for you. It was really weird and it was really intense and I loved it, so I gave it 5 stars. And then of course I saved the best for last, and this was my favorite book that I read this month, and it might be one of my favorites of the year. This is Dress Codes for Small Towns by Courtney Stevens. And I saw Lala from Books and Lala like this book, and she's like, I've read this twice in the last like month, and I was like, okay, there's gotta be something like up to that. So I read it. You guys see the annotations that I made in this. It's not even worth it for me to read you half of them because I'm just gonna tell you, read the damn book. Basically this book is like just everything. It's so lovely. So this book has to do with a girl named Billy who's from a small town in Kentucky called Otters Holt, and she has a group of friends that they call the Hexagon. It's all about friendship. It's all about just being different in a small town, which I can relate to, and how they want to save like their town festival. It seems simple in that concept, but the descriptions of living in a small town, the description of friendships, and just like the warmth of small town life. Like if you're not from a small town, you might not like relate, but like I could super relate to this book. She has a lot of discussions in regards to like platonic love and deciding like, you know, how do you love your friends in certain ways, as well as figuring out her sexuality and gender identity. So this is just, oh, it is a beautiful book. I loved, I loved so many things about this. Just some of the descriptions of like just being in a small town are just, oh, they like hit me so hard. This is just one. The light bend golden and glowing over the horizon and trees. Perhaps I've been alive for 17 years, perhaps 300. On a day like today, age is irrelevant, existent is infinite. And then another sort of description, it says, I guess I always thought it worked like this. You talk, you kiss, you fall in love, you buy a Buick, never leave Otters Holt. There's sex in there somewhere. Sort of talking about like how life is supposed to be, which I can relate to that. You know, another description, it says, power and darkness were everywhere. The evening was quiet except for a barking dog and the Vilmers' bleeding goats. Bleeding goat. Did I say bleeding goats? Bleating goats. Otters Holt by night was all ghost, no town. I like it. It's just the relationships between friends is pure and raw, and everyone is wonderful. The relationship between her and her father is just beautiful. There is some talk about religion in this, but it's not like in-your-face religion. It's not something that I don't think anyone can relate to in any way. Everybody in this book is just wonderful. The characters are great. Just read this. Just read this. It's perfect. It's just, and it just made me feel good for fall, actually, because there's a lot of talk about moving like a little bit between summer to fall. So yeah, read this immediately. Go buy this like now. This was actually a new book that I bought. I saw it at Chapters and I went, yes. You guys should know that I almost never buy newly released books. I have so many older books that I want to read that, you know, to me, I just am like, oh, I'll get to it eventually when it's cheaper, I can pick it up secondhand. No, I immediately went and bought this, and I read it like the next day and a half, and I loved it. So go get this. But yeah, that is my August wrap up, and those are the books that I read and loved. Let me know down in the comments if you love and have read any of those books as well. I did notice just a couple hours ago that I ended up hitting 1,000 subscribers. So I didn't think that this channel would grow that fast, so I just want to say a big thank you for everyone who has stuck around and is watching my videos. So I love and appreciate all of you. So yeah, everyone is doing good, and until my next video, I'll talk to all you soon.